Now that we've practiced drawing our value scale, it's time to practice drawing with a grid. To do that, we're going to take this 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper and we're going to turn this into a 6 square grid.
I'll be showing 3 different ways to make this grid. Just choose what works best for you. The first method is going to be using a ruler. I'm going to measure halfway between 8.5 and make a mark right at 4.25. I'll do that on both sides. And then I'll connect those 2 marks with a thin line. Don't push down too hard. We're going to end up erasing this grid later. Now I'm going to need to make my last 2 lines. To do that, we're going to have to split 11 into 3 equal pieces, which is a little bit difficult because 11 doesn't split evenly into 3. We're going to have to kind of guesstimate for these 2 points. I'm measuring between 3.5 and 3/4. And I'm going to have to guesstimate for that last point, which I'm going to mark around 7.25. After you've done that, you're going to make those same 2 measurements on the other side of your paper, a little bit more than 3.5, and then at 7.25. Now draw a thin line very lightly to connect those 2 lines, and you have your 6 square grid. So the second method, you are going to fold your paper. First, fold this in half the long way, then unfold. And now what you're going to do, this part is a little bit trickier. So what I'm doing is I'm taking my paper and I'm folding those 2 sides in, and then I'm kind of wiggling the paper around until I can get it to match up edge to edge. As I'm folding it in, I don't crease the paper right away. I'm just trying to get the measurement right first, and it doesn't need to be exactly perfect, because if we can get it close enough, this will work just fine for our grid. And then once I have those lined up, then I'm going to crease the paper down. It's a little bit tricky, and if this way doesn't make sense, I'll show one last way to do this. With this last method, you'll be folding your paper in half again, and now to make those last 2 grid lines, what I'm going to do is I'm going to lightly sketch and estimate where I think those lines should be, just using your eye to estimate where you think that paper would split evenly into 3 pieces. Once you kind of have that sketched out very lightly with pencil, now you're going to take any straight edge. You could even use another 8.5 by 11 paper. I'm going to be using a folder. Then you'll draw over that line. Now you're just going to clean up those sketch marks until you have a nice clean light grid line, and then you're just going to clean up those sketch marks again, and you have your 6 square grid.
So I'm going to put my reference right here and we're going to get started.
Pick a point to begin your drawing. I'm starting in the upper left, finding that darkest crease of the eyelid. It comes out in an arc that has a slight flatness at the top, very subtle. Try to notice these subtle details as you work. Now I find the lower arc of that eyelid, with that right corner of the eye stopping right at the center grid line. This is similar to a contour, and will be the basis of our drawing, our sketch. Go lightly in case things need to be erased. We will be adding value to this later to really make it come to life. Notice that tear duct, that left corner of the eye, is lower than that center grid line. It's not completely in line with the opposite corner of the eye. Don't get stuck just looking at your paper. Make sure you pay attention to the reference photo and notice these things. Notice where one line or shape begins in relation to the corner of the box. We're breaking things down into simple lines and shapes as we do this. This video is sped up, but when you work, I want you to go slowly. Don't get stuck only looking at what you're drawing on the page. Make sure to be closely observing the reference, just like we did with our contour drawing. Pay attention to where your light and dark areas will be. When you draw the highlight of the eye, remember that the eye is round, so that highlight curves around the eye near the pupil. It's not flat, so don't draw it as just a box like it's flat. When people draw lashes, sometimes they make the mistake of drawing them completely straight. If you look at the photo, you'll notice that real lashes are curving from underneath the eyelid, so don't draw them completely straight. Same goes for the bottom lashes, but those will be less full and a lot shorter. This should only take you about 30 minutes or less to complete. Make sure you take a photo when you finish so that you can upload it to Google Classroom. Then, after your photo, you'll use this for the 3rd lesson.